Well, I titled this sermon, Pour Down Justice. What does that mean to you? Justice. What does justice mean to you? Now I have to say, and I don't actually say this proudly, Brent and I watch a lot of crime shows on TV. And there are quite a few. There are police series and detective shows and courtroom dramas and legal mysteries. And the thing they all have in common is that every single one of them, in all of them, there are victims, right? That's what they all have. And so often, some main character, whether it's a police officer or a DA or someone in there, will speak to the victim in great distress, seeking to bring them comfort and vowing now as the story gets moved forward, promises to bring them justice. And that's where my theological cogs just begin to spin. Just spin. Justice. What are they promising when they promise that? Huh? What kind of justice are they talking about? It must mean, we all know what it means, right? It's very clear to the TV audience, it's clear to me, it must be clear to you. They're promising to apprehend the one who might have committed the crime, or they're promising to prove the person who gets arrested to be guilty and put them away, or they're promising to assign punishment to the guilty person, depending upon what kind of crime show it is. That's what they're promising to do. And when that is done, we have justice, and the credits go up, and we're happy. Sometimes on the shows, if that doesn't work out exactly right, we'll go straight to vigilanteism. And we feel, all of us, me too, we feel righteous about the main characters injuring or killing the villain, proven guilty or not, if it's the only way to get justice. So, justice. Believe me, as I prepared this, knowing that now we have for sure a judge and an attorney sitting in front of me, this is really interesting now. But it's okay, they'll talk to me later. So, we understand that kind of justice, and I don't think there is one of us here who hasn't defined justice in these terms, if not all the time, at least some of the time. Am I right? No, maybe not, but I'm pretty human. I'm way human. So, who hasn't wished the world worked this way? Good things happen to good people who do good things, and bad things happen to bad people who do bad things. Don't we wish it worked that way? I mean, whoops. there's my friend Jim Newsom. Whoops. But you know what? That's not even karma. That's not, and I don't mean karma. That's not even karma. Karma, spelled with a K, is trusting that the good or bad we do in life will follow us into later, times. We want, most of us, instant karma. We want karma now. We want it to attention spans run out. We don't want to wait for it. But what about God? What about God? Where is God in the question of justice? As we learned last week, chapter 7 of Luke contains 3 stories that demonstrate the compassion of God. Remember? Remember from last week? I hope. Please. There was the faithful centurion, remember? And his servant that Jesus healed from a distance. Didn't even need to go. And there was the widow whose only son, Jesus, returned to life, which restored her life. Great compassion on the part of God, and also more than just compassion. One story showed that God is inclined toward mercy toward all people, even Romans who were the enemy. And the other story shows that God is not linked to the 605 Pharisaic laws. Remember, God gave the 10 Commandments, and then those other laws in Leviticus were written by the Pharisees. I just want you to be clear on where these laws come from. But rather, the law of love and compassion, that's the one that Jesus supports. As you might be saying, wait a minute, we started talking about justice and now she's talking about compassion. Wait a second. The sermon title is Pour Down Justice. What does justice have to do with compassion? Well, that's a good question. Let's look at the story for today. Jesus is invited to a dinner at the home of Simon the Pharisee. And we learn right away that Jesus is not an honored guest. Did you pick that up? Was that clear to you right away? Yeah. Because when Jesus arrives, it just says he goes immediately and takes his place at the table. If Jesus had been an honored guest, there would have been a little ceremony involved. Simon would have kissed him on both cheeks. Simon would have anointed his head. Simon would have had foot washing for him to clear the dust off of his sandals. That's what you do with honored guests. But it says very clearly, Jesus arrived and went immediately to the table. It's sort of like, yeah, you're here, fine, sit down. See, there's a lot of stuff when you read the foreign guest that we don't pick up on. They'd have picked up on it in the first century. We don't catch it. But that's what it means. He isn't shown the honor that a privileged guest would have received. But then, after Jesus is seated, which really means reclining, not sitting, but reclining, head sort of pointed in, feet sort of towards the back, which makes it a little easier to understand how that woman could sneak in, right? Otherwise, it seems a little weird how she could get under the chair. I mean, if you don't understand how they're seated, it's weird, right? But they recline. That's how they sit, in sort of, you know. So Jesus is reclining with his head in and the food in the middle, and everybody's like that. She's back there by his feet. But she comes in, and she's with her head down, no doubt, and she's quiet and seemingly unnoticed until she begins to minister to Jesus. And then Simon sees her, and he knows who she is. He knows. They all know her because she's a sinner. We don't know exactly what it is, and the scripture doesn't say. Could it be that she's a prostitute? Possibly. Possibly. Or it could be something else, and we don't know what it is, but it's substantial. And she is filled with shame, so much shame that she weeps. And with her many tears, she bathes Jesus' Jesus' feet. It pours out of her eyes and onto his feet. Have you ever cried like that? Have you? No? I have. I have cried where if I were sitting at a table, there would be a puddle. I know some people haven't. I know some people do not cry. And so this seems like a silly story, but I cry like that. I cry at the drop of a hat. I cry, right, my friend? I cry over everything. I cry. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. And when I'm really sad, I really cry. Thank you, Jim. One of our deacons. It is okay. It is okay to weep. And this woman weeps, and then she undoes her hair. Women did not cut their hair ever, so this would have been a big shock of hair. And she dries his feet. And with expensive oil, she anoints his feet, which gives him honor. This was an honorable thing to do. You do it to anoint kings, and you do it in preparation for burial. And she kisses his feet to soothe him and to show her love. It's a ritual of intimacy only done in those occasions I just mentioned, or within a household, or in a less honorable situation that a woman might do for a man. Simon becomes aware of her and takes it as a fault of Jesus that he doesn't turn her away. Surely, if he knew who she was and what she had done, he would cast her off the way the rest of them were. And by allowing her to give him this attention, he was making himself unclean, just like when he touched the funeral bier and when he touched the dead body of the young man. He made himself unclean. So by allowing this gift from her, he risked his own status, little though it was already. But Jesus knows that she has come to him as her last hope. And somehow she knows that while there is no other way for her to return to mainstream life, maybe he can give it to her. Somehow she knows that he can give her justice. Justice. That's the way God thinks of the work. That he can restore her to righteousness. He can forgive her, give her mercy, and she can be whole again. She can start over, she can begin anew. He can give her freedom from her shame. Somehow she knows that, and she has come to him and shown her gratitude in advance, like the centurion. Like the widow, Jesus has known her need without her needing to speak a word. And like the Roman, she has shown her faith. Do you understand? Okay. But then there's Simon. There's Simon. He's still standing there and he does not understand. He doesn't get it at all. Simon's life is built on laws. Laws, 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 laws. No offense. Laws, not from God, but written down by the other Pharisees, and they are well-meaning. There are 605 of them in Leviticus. They are well-meaning, well-intentioned laws written to help the people through hard times. In that when they were off in exile, that's what they were intended for. You know, they would intended to help them keep their identity as Hebrew people when they were stuck in the middle of Mesopotamia. Keep them from becoming Babylonians. And they covered every tiny detail of everything. Don't wear your cotton with your linen. They did. But they were laws that had taken on a life of their own, and Jesus spent his entire life trying to make it clear to them that the law wasn't more important than human beings. Remember what Jesus would do? He would break them on purpose, and then he would say, come on, even you would save your ox if it fell into the hole on a Sabbath. Even you would do that. Don't tell me you wouldn't. You know these stories. So if you'd save your ox, surely you would save a person. Jesus struggled so often against the laws that were administered without grace, and we struggle against some of them still today. So Jesus tells a story to Simon about two debtors, each of whom are forgiven. One who owes a much and one who owes only a little. And which, Jesus asks, having been forgiven, will be more grateful? Simon rightly answers, the one who is forgiven more. And Jesus points out that Simon has done very little for him. But the woman has shown her love to him and gratitude at great risk to her and in great abundance. And Jesus declares her sins are forgiven. As a note, there is nothing said about Simon's sins. A milder version of the song that John read for us, that in the Psalms it talks about God destroying. Sometimes God's retribution can just be an omission. So what should justice mean to Christians? We who have been forgiven so much. I can think of one person I've heard who thinks that God doesn't owe any forgiveness to this individual. But most of us would say that we need to be forgiven and are forgiven. I won't ask for hands, but most of us believe that we have been forgiven and need to be forgiven. But why then do we struggle so hard with the balance between justice and forgiveness? Why do we struggle so? I've sat in on so many discussions between people where people struggle so hard. Well, that sounds right, but even so, don't we justice and forgiveness, just leave the justice to God. God's justice isn't about retribution. God's justice is about restoration. And that's hard for us, very, very hard for us. Divine justice isn't about making things turn out our way. It's about making things turn out God's way. We get angry when we are wronged. We get angry when evil happens, when losses occur, when the world treats us with injustice, or someone we love with injustice. We even get upset with God when terrible things happen to us. We're human and we're flawed. The problem is, we much too often fail to see the injustice built into the human systems that make things terrible, not just occasionally, but frequently for so many in the world. That's what we are blind to, the way we make injustice happen. And that's what breaks God's heart. That's the kind of injustice that stirs God's compassion and makes God put his thumb on the scales of the other side. This is for those who suffer from the injustice that we inflict on each other. We can't stop tornadoes. We can't prevent hurricanes. But there is so much injustice that we create from our own fear, our own selfishness, our own greed. And that's the kind of injustice that God wants us as Christians, his children, his family of God, to work to end in ourselves and together united in the world. And we will do it because of the compassion we feel for our brothers and sisters. Micah 6, one of my favorite verses, I hope yours as well. What does the Lord require of us, of you? To act justly. To act justly. To love mercy. And to walk humbly with our God. That's our challenge for this week, for every week. Pour down justice.